Hi, friend, and welcome back to Debrief with Danny. Our guest for tonight isn't just reading the signals because he's been tracking the Philippine economy since the 80s. The 80s, oh, what a time. He has lived through the highs, the lows, the crisis, and the rebounds, and for sure the patterns that tend to repeat. So Jun Neri has worked with the Bangko Sentral of the Philippines. He has also advised the Asian Development Bank. He has also taught monetary and fiscal policies, and of course, he has contributed to some of Southeast Asia's key research efforts. And today, he leads one of the country's most respected research teams who has consistently been ranked among the best by Bloomberg and Business World. And I'm very, very humbled to have him on my podcast tonight because just recently, hindi pa siya tapos, friends. He was also named the best economist for 2023 to 2024 by the Fund Managers Association of the Philippines. And the reason why I want to bring in his perspective to you guys tonight is because we're at another global turning point with all the tariff talk happening, and heating up in the US. The central banks, including the Fed, they're all weighing their next moves. And whatever happens out there ultimately doesn't stay out there because it's going to shape what's going to happen here in our country. And you know how much I want you guys to stay informed. So let's get right into it. I want to talk to the young Jun Neri.
Mhm.
And I want to understand how you found your way into economics.
It was my undergrad course,
Mm. Mm-mm.
but I started working for another bank. Actually, that was my first job,
Mm-mm.
and the job market wasn't as good as this today. So it was really
Mm-mm.
horrible. It was after the
Mm-mm.
the coup d'état, the famous coup d'états of the late 80s. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
coup attempts against Cory Aquino. So
Oo.
So the economy was very, very unstable. People pulled out of the Philippines at the start. It was a very promising environment, and then when we graduated, it was actually quite uncertain, just like it is today. But the job opportunities weren't so great. So what I did was I pursued further studies instead. And that's when I really learned how to like economics because I studied first and then started teaching shortly after. And that was where I became super passionate about, teaching. Still hoping that after I retire, I get to teach, no, but it doesn't earn you enough money. So that's why I had to jump to the corporate sector again. It's not a natural science, it's not engineering. It's a social science, no, but I like the discipline of providing evidence, no? And you can use for your narrative to explain things to your audience. Of course, many other disciplines involve some degree or large degree of evidence, diba? But economics, they say, is the queen of the social sciences. So among the social sciences, it's one of the one that has really strong empirical support for findings, no? That allows the economists to come up with stories, with narratives, with explanations of phenomenon of reality.
Very integral ang economics, especially, well, with my line of work is with the strategy, right? So we really
Mm.
start with the macro perspective, and then how does the business now play into given these economic conditions. So
Mm.
today, the Junary today, is there a specific anchor that still grounds you in economics?
Well, I like what I do, and I really
Mm,
enjoy it when the audience responds and they
yeah.
actually try to apply what they learn, no, to
Mm-mm.
from what we discuss. No? So as you know, the usual economist or the more common professional economist would be someone from the academe,
Yes.
someone in the policy area, no. But
Yes.
the particular area that I'm in is providing businessmen informed decisions, or making informed decisions on the basis of what we provide them. We also cover the market. We call ourselves market economists as a way to distinguish ourselves from academic economists, from policymakers who are running the economy. Instead, we are very much interacting with the corporate sector, with businessmen, with our clients, and our bosses, the owners of the conglomerates, the bank.
Are there, so you mentioned, uh, I'm just trying to explore.
Right.
um, so you mentioned there's an academe type of economist, and then
Hmm.
there's a policy type kind of
Hmm.
economist, and there's like a business type of economist. I am just wondering, what are the nuances or the differences between the three usually when it comes to perspective?
Yeah, I
Mm-mm.
guess it varies in terms of the outcomes or the results they can identify with. So the
Mm-mm.
academic economist, the policy economist, of course, the policy economist is, if they can help lawmakers and planners come up with the ideal economic
Uh-huh.
environment. No? For academic economists, they typically count the number of journals that they're able to publish, no? And the more prestigious the journal, the more they like it. No? So that's their usual measure of success. How many years they've been teaching in the university, and whether they reach the full professor status. No, that's the more, I guess, mainstream type of academic economist. No? So in our case, as market economists, we watch the financial markets and also industries, no? Like
Right.
your sector, yeah, our sector, the banking sector. We look at
Right.
how the performance of industries and companies are affected by other economic indicators. We
Yeah.
prepare the information, we analyze them, and then we share it with the businessmen and our bosses, which they can use for decision making.
So, got it.
Sorry, very long explanation.
It's okay. I like it because it gives more color into the different types of economies, and so ang understanding ko is it really varies on the success metric of you as an economist, and
Yeah, your measure
in
of measure of
okay,
success, or your, yeah.
yes, and the use of the information.
Yes.
So since okay, let's focus on the business side of things. Since you mentioned you have been closely watching the economy, are there any specific signals that you closely watch out, especially right now in the period of transition and the age of AI, and then there is Trump also
Mhm.
happening in the global economy.
Well, actually, it evolves. It changes, no, Danny. So we would actually be more comfortable. It will be if it will be the same set of indicators that you monitor. No, if you just look at the standard economic, indicators that we watch closely, of course, that includes, economic activity, which we
Mhm.
usually measure using GDP growth. We check whether economies can achieve a certain degree of growth, because in the Philippines, for example, we need to grow faster than the United States because our population is getting bigger, and our countrymen are coming from a low level of income that needs to catch up with the rest of the world. So you really
Mm-mm.
need to grow much faster, and you have to monitor that pace of growth. At the same time, you need to watch cost of living, because
Mhm.
even if your incomes improve, if inflation continues to rise rapidly, very quickly, then it erodes all the income that you make. Your real income actually
Right.
doesn't improve. So those are some of the most basic indicators we watch.
Mm-mm.
And the other indicators, like the exchange rate, interest rate,
Mm-mm.
they're all just like secondary indicators that you need to watch. But the
Yeah.
primary ones are really, the activity, the income capacity, the employment
Mm-mm.
situation in the economy, and then of course prices, to ensure that,
Yeah.
you know people may have jobs, but they don't have enough wages to to
Yes.
see their lives improving. Yeah.
Correct. 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 So real income, GDP, inflation, of course. unemployment rate. Sorry, Sir June, nag-trickle back lang ako with the history
Mm-hmm.
that
Go
you
ahead.
have in
Go
your
ahead.
head. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
since you mentioned you started your career during the time when Cory, the coup
Mm-hmm.
d'etat era, right?
Yeah.
And then
I
now,
started studying. Yes.
yes, you started studying at that time. So
Yes.
you have witnessed how the Philippine economy has
Mm.
evolved throughout the years. And I would just like to maybe understand it from your perspective na parang, and also to share to the audience. How did that happen? Like yung siguro from the time of Cory up to
Mm.
today, how did our economy shifted? How did we
Mm-hmm.
grow? Did we parang shrink in size? Did we
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So, late 80s, early 90s, the business environment was quite tough, Danny. So, for example, back then, if you wanted to borrow money, today, the young people are complaining about, interest rates on my mortgage are 7%, 8%. If you're not very lucky, maybe 9%. When I was a young professional, started teaching, the interest rate was more like 15, 18, 20, 25%. So it was a tougher environment to raise money, to expand business, to pursue your ideas, no, because it was very restrictive, very hard to gain access to affordable funding. And again, in the context of today's environment, it really was tougher, a lot tougher back then. Again, I told you I had very few job options back in
Yeah.
'89. That's
Uh-uh.
why I decided to study. I would have pursued banking. Um, I could have stuck around and with that same company, but I felt
Mm-mm.
like I had to show that I offered something more than everybody else. That's why I
Yeah.
started, considering doing full-time studies. No? So poverty rates were so much higher then. So much more people actually living below the poverty line. The employment situation was a lot worse. Again, if today it's around 4% unemployment, maybe 10% underemployment, easily triple back in the 80s and early 90s. No? So that's why people from my generation don't really complain much because we're we feel like we're living in a much better world today. No? So despite between the boomers, the Gen Xers,
Mm-mm.
and the Gen Zers and the
Yeah.
millennials, it's probably
Mm-mm.
due to that we went through that episode in our history where life
Mm-mm.
was a lot more challenging, we think, and that many of the challenges today, from our perspective, looks
Yeah.
very simple. No? But again, that's also our something we need to learn. Our generation needs to learn what it is that you folks are really going through. The challenge
Yeah.
of social media. We never really had those
Mm-mm.
things. AI and job security. I guess it's
Mm-mm.
all relative. No, it's all relative, Danny. I
Right.
guess.
That's a very interesting perspective, Sir June, because like as you said, my generation now, we do see it na it's really hard to live in this
Mm-hmm.
economy. And I think it's really to give color on that lang.
Mm-hmm.
Um with I think with the rise of the internet kasi, parang since we have access to information and parang it kind of leveled the playing field in a way. So, parang at the same essence, yung job opportunities are actually harder to be in,
Mm-hmm.
especially now with the AI coming in. What happens is AI or the automation part takes all the entry level
Mm-hmm.
roles in which yung
Agree.
skills na you get, parang the skills that you need to have in the workplace, it's gonna be harder to get that, especially kasi mismatch yung education,
Mm.
yung curriculum natin with the demands that we have now or the evolving demands of the labor
Correct.
force today. So parang I think that's one. And then second is, um, in our country's context, pag-usapan namin in our last episode na you have the digital divide gap or you have the digital
Mm.
gap, right? And then now with the AI, mas parang tumaas yung benchmark na you need to be at this
Mhm.
level. So that's the second one. And then I think the third one is um the globalization aspect na parang you're not just competing with the people within the area that you
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
dun sa job na ina-apply mo, but also,
Borderless na, no? Yeah.
yes, globalized na siya. Pero, if in terms of, I'm just trying to understand, like, your context also from before, it's kind of the same,
Mhm.
like, how it,
Yeah.
maybe, like, how it feels, no, at that
Yeah. The nature
time.
of the challenges are different,
Mm-mm.
um, but it wasn't easy either back then, no? Because we didn't have phones. We didn't have cell phones, and
Yeah.
things didn't move as efficiently, and information was moving very slowly. You don't really
Mm-mm.
know where the jobs are, no? So, and then the
Correct.
governments had such a huge debt. We had to pay a lot of foreign exchange obligations abroad,
Mm-mm.
because of huge borrowings in the past, and
That's true.
that made it very difficult. And the environment was so volatile.
Mm-mm.
One day interest rates were 10. Next week
Yeah.
it can be 15, 18. Yeah, so
Mm.
it was really moving very quickly, and
So,
very hard to make firm decisions. No, so the
mm-mm.
uncertainty that you have today, for example,
Yeah.
because of the big changes in policy announcements in the US, for
Mm.
example, people cannot plan so well. No,
Yeah.
mm, in the same way in the 80s, things were so moving so fast. The markets were moving so fast that people would rather just hold on to something conservative like
Right.
a treasury bill. A treasury bill today earns you like 4 or
Mm-mm.
5%. A treasury
Mm-mm.
bill back then would earn you 15, 20, even 30%,
Ah.
50%. Yeah. So why we even work? Why bother
Mm-mm.
uh,
Correct.
building a business if you can earn just putting the money in the bank, earning
Right.
30%, 20%. So people couldn't find jobs because the businessmen didn't want to invest. No? So,
Yeah. Mag-buy na lang, no? Ng
yeah,
ano. Yeah. Tapos at that time, grabe. Sorry, I'm just trying to really, like, I'm trying to put myself in in your
yeah,
shoes
yeah.
during that time. And
That's
I'm trying to
important. But
appreciate
in
it.
your case, I do appreciate that the challenge, the
Mm.
skills matching that you said earlier. No,
Mm-mm.
um, so we don't have we don't even have enough resources for basic education, right?
True.
How can we graduate to you know, um,
Mm-mm.
middle school, high school, college if the basics are not sufficient and people are not sufficiently nourished? No, how
Correct.
can we compete in a global environment if
That's
your
true.
starting point is quite low?
Mm-mm. Given that, Sir June, how do you think leaders across sectors, not just in finance, from where we come from, can better understand and respond to the shifts that are happening right now, especially with the added
Hmm.
uncertainty that Trump,
Hmm.
the
Yeah, well,
government.
you really have to be more agile.
Mm,
You can adjust quickly, so that means that you don't really pour in heavily into something that can change very quickly either, right? But at the same time, you have to be able to identify the opportunities. No? So I'll give you an
mm,
example. Property sector in the Philippines. No? There's two major disruptions, two major pivots that we made as an economy. Number one is we had the offshore gaming companies right here, the Pogos. We embraced them back in 2016, 2017, 2018, and then we realized the side effects, the problems of money laundering, the problems of human trafficking. that we decided to let go of them last year, no, formally. No, they already started to leave during the pandemic, but we deliberately let go of them because of, again, of these negatives last year, no, and that left a huge void in the sector. Some areas in Metro Manila, some areas in Central Luzon, no, got affected significantly. The other thing is COVID, Danny. The remote workers. You said global worker today. Anybody can work from the beach and work for someone from North America or from Egypt or from any other part of the world. No, uh, that has led to a decline in demand for office, no? Traditional
Yeah.
office. And again, this is the example I'm saying, that in those particular segments of property, demand has been disrupted. And if you're not quick enough
Mm-mm.
to make the adjustment to move to where the opportunities are, like logistics, or cold storage facilities, or tourism, or energy,
Yeah.
where the prospects now are really very strong, with
Mm.
the data centers
Mm.
from Singapore being already saturated. They want to go elsewhere, like the Philippines, electric batteries, again,
Mm.
using AI. So there are a lot of opportunities. So you have to be prepared for those. No, so very
Mm-mm.
tough. Again, a very tough environment. Even if you're well informed, you don't know what will disrupt you. And again, with the leadership changes and the new the decisions of the pronouncements and policy direction of the U.S. evolving. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just that it's evolving
Mm.
very fast. No, especially
Yeah.
with the turnover in government last January.
Mm-mm.
No, it's even more challenging for investors to be agile and be prepared for changes, because suddenly it's so hard to predict now how supply chains will react to the
Yeah.
tariffs, for example. Yeah, so the
Mm.
tariffs, the migration policy. Can you
Mm-mm.
still hire the same set of people? Now, OFWs now have to pay taxes. They might have to pay taxes later on. So if you're in the manning industry, if you're in the human resource industry,
Mm-mm.
that's a huge challenge for you, and you have to be ready and make the necessary adjustments. But these are the kinds of challenges that businessmen go through these days, no. But there are also opportunities that they're prepared to take on now.
Was there an event in history that kind of mirrors our situation
Mm.
today, Sir June? Kasi I'm
Mhm.
trying to look for patterns. Kasi, let's say for
Mm.
example, di ba, the I think like 2 years ago, parang we can maybe find similarities from when .com
Mm.
was
Mm.
about to rise ng mga
Yes.
2000s, and then ano yung mga ginawa ng business, ganyan. So I'm trying
Mhm.
to find like a similar scenario here in the
Mm.
economy. Meron ba tayong ganun from before that we can learn from the past that we can apply today?
It's an evolving it's a continuing process of creative destruction. So it's a famous economist, Joseph Schumpeter, no, is the one who coined that term, no, and to him, he would rather let markets be left to themselves and avoid government intervention to prevent the natural course of creative destruction, no? So it even even electricity, when it was disrupting oil, no, as the
Yeah.
main source of energy. So
Mm-mm.
there's always this continuing process of people buying a lot of stocks of what is Nvidia today was maybe the electricity company of the late 19th, the early 19th century. No, it's been happening all along, Danny. So a lot of it
Mm-mm.
are different, but there are a lot of similarities as well. No, that if
Yeah.
you're not ready for the new technology, you'll get left behind. And those who are always looking around to ensure that they are informed about what
Yeah.
could disrupt them, always paranoid about what can
Mm-mm.
change them. their lives are the ones who turn out in good shape uh, after a while.
Mm-mm.
No? Sila yung
Yeah.
nakaka-persist. They're the ones who are able to. That's why you need economists for informed decision.
Correct, correct. So, is it safe to say that we're really at the cusp of like the inflection point in the economy?
Hmm. In different respects, no? In different
Mm,
areas, Danny, as you
mm-mm,
say, uh, technologies since the internet came has
mm-mm.
evolved quite really
Very quick, no?
very quickly.
Yeah,
It's almost a revolution, and AI is again the new thing that will really make it even more challenging for businessmen, for workers, as you said, no, for
yeah.
HR. So all the more that we should be better informed, all the more
Mm,
that we should make the adjustments. No, otherwise we will be disrupted.
correct. I'm trying to digest, Sir June, what
Go
you're
ahead. Sorry, I'm saying
you've
I'm
been
talking too
what you've
much.
been saying. It's okay. You can ask me questions also if you want, but
Hmm.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
under.
you're taking up studies, right? You're taking a master's, right?
I'm actually done na.
Ah, you're done. You're done. Yeah, yeah. You took
Mm-mm.
your master's.
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
yes.
So
So when
you studied all of these, innovation courses, right?
yes, yes. So parang like as you said, we're trying to spot the opportunities,
Hmm.
given the economic conditions right now and your consumer behavior
Hmm.
and what are the trends that are happening today. What opportunities can you leverage
Hmm.
into? But then the contrast there is how quickly can you move.
Hmm.
Kasi yung speed to market mo naman yung parang at risk or yun yung competition mo. Kasi right now, ideas are very abundant.
Correct.
It's really a matter of the speed of your execution plus the quality of your execution.
Hmm.
So, that's still, ano
Of
no,
course.
kaya ang daming pagod.
Yes, yes, yes. Agree,
Ang
agree.
daming pagod, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, right now, we're in
Yeah, I
half.
also wanted to mention that
Mm,
these geopolitical challenges are quite
mm,
what's similar to what we're going through now is, I guess, when the US took over the leadership in global power from Great
mm,
Britain, no? So ngayon
mm,
there's this fight between China and the United States, diba? On
mm,
who will dominate. So some of what Mr. Trump is trying to introduce is is to keep China from taking on the leadership in the global economy,
mm,
So that's why some of his policies don't sound mainstream, no. So they're kind of unorthodox, no.
right.
And that's probably because of, again, the power struggle, no, the national security concerns that Mr. Trump is trying to pursue. Actually, it's not very clear to me what exactly
Mm,
he's trying to carry out, but it
yeah.
seems that national security is one of the major considerations. No, so for example, he talks about fentanyl. No,
Mm,
you're talking about tariffs, and then suddenly he's talking about fentanyl, and apparently he could be using the tariffs as a way to negotiate for reduction in the export of fentanyls to the United States. So it's
mm,
not so clear to me what the the end
mm.
game is. His vision of what the
Oo.
end game is going to be. But clearly, one of them is national security, uh, and um, and who will lead, the global economy, who will be the biggest and most dominant economy in the world, uh, between the US and China. So some of his policies appear to be in
Yeah.
consideration of that. No? So there were probably similar episodes in the past, and some would
Mm,
say that Richard Nixon in the early 70s was
mm.
was behaving like Donald Trump
Like,
is today. No,
day.
I'm not sure. I wasn't old enough to observe that if that was the case back in the early
Yeah.
70s, because I was still a small child back then. Yeah.
What would be the? I'm trying to play around with the scenario, Sir June. If let's stick with that the Trump, the U.S. and the China, um, how would we call it? Like a is it a? I wouldn't want to
Power
call it a
struggle.
war.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
power struggle,
Mhm.
yes, power struggle. Um, if China, let's say, gets the upper hand, what do you think would be the implications in the Philippines if ganun yung mangyari?
That's a it's a very tough scenario to imagine. But I think, as you said, we should be imagining these things, no, as part of
Mm,
as our discipline of risk management, right?
mm,
So actually, these days, very hard to show any strong loyalty to either
yeah,
side, right? So
yeah,
even if you're a company, you can't close your
correct.
doors.
Mm,
No, no, I know of some companies who use both US and Chinese
yeah,
technology, and
mm,
usually the US folks would say, please get rid of the Chinese portion, and then the Chinese portion would say, please get rid of the of the US technology,
uh,
because of spying, because of all sorts. But it's
yeah,
really it's a game of dominance, and
mm,
who becomes the winner in the end. No, so this thing about, again, tariffs. I think I've heard a lot of analysts, and again, I cannot
yeah,
validate it myself.
yeah,
Something about military, the
mm,
weapons production. No, uh,
right,
the fear of the U.S. is if they don't implement these tariffs, they
mm,
will get so left behind in weapons manufacture, no? And that could be a big threat of national security for the U.S. No? So
correct,
by implementing tariffs, they hope to be able to rebuild their steel industry, and
mm,
from there, make sure that they avoid the Pearl Harbor moment. The Pearl
mm,
Harbor moment is when they were attacked by the U.S. was attacked by the Japanese because they weren't prepared. No? So,
yeah,
as an analogy, if they don't have enough investments in manufacturing, uh,
mm,
and they don't implement the tariffs to ensure that they can go back to manufacturing, then
mm,
China will be the dominant player in weapons manufacturing, no? And they could end up being dominated by China. So those
mm,
kinds of considerations. No? Again, no way for me to validate
yeah,
those analysis. Yeah.
interesting. So that's why I think I've read it somewhere na I could be mistaken, but I've read it somewhere na parang the reason also why Trump did that was because he wanted his people to buy more bills, tama ba? Treasury bills for the from the US government so that yun nga, I guess for the funds with I'm trying to connect it with what you said na if his people would invest in his government then he could additionally use those extra funds
Mm.
to do that yung manufacturing side of the
Yeah.
weapon
So yeah,
manufacturing.
that's true. No, the U.S. dollar is considered the most dominant reserve currency. So
Mm-mm.
because a good portion of global trade is transacted
Mm-mm.
using or denominated in US dollars. So
Yeah.
if they lose that stature as reserve currency, then that could be huge. That could have a huge impact on the U.S. economy, and again, for national security purposes, they
Right.
would want to avoid it. So you could be right, no, that this is one of their major considerations in what they're trying to do, no,
Mm-mm.
implementing tariffs, and making immigration more strict, no.
Mm-mm.
All are part of such could be part of such a goal, no? Of
Yeah.
keeping the dominance, so remaining the reserve currency economy, remaining to be the leader on
Mm-mm.
defense, on um, politics, no, yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting kasi even the ang tawag dito, even the leadership principles, I would say,
Hmm.
nag-shift siya also to the Eastern way of
Mm.
doing things. Kasi
Principles, yeah.
right, the principles. Kasi I've been watching mga podcasts from the US also,
Mm.
ganyan, and other countries. And then, what I noticed, since the pandemic, di ba, reflect mga tao, ganyan. And then, right now, as I've observed it, in terms of yung connection or the humanness, um, na tinatay back to the Eastern way of doing things, which is like your Buddhism, mga
Mm.
ganyan. So, you would see monks giving advices to,
Mm.
or mga wisdom advice to
Leaders.
the leaders in the Western culture. And it's being more
Mm.
and more, they're being more and more receptive for
Mm.
it. And
Mm.
interesting yung shift na yun, the power from the west to the east.
That's right.
And I'm curious to see how the Philippines would play out in that.
Mm. We're
We have,
very Western, right? Yeah.
as
Mm.
we're very a westernized country, and
Country.
then we shift it back, parang just my imagination is going everywhere.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is we really
Yeah.
have to be prepared
Very
from.
hard to really
Mm,
pin down what's.
yeah.
But these are early days for the Trump administration, so
Mm-mm.
it's possible that the policy, it's sounds very radical. Things are being changed very quickly, and the adjustments that need to be made are quite huge. No, you
Yeah.
can just imagine the U.S. trying to produce iPhones at the same cost that China has
Mm-mm.
been producing it all these years, diba?
Yeah.
That's a very tough feat and a huge adjustment for Apple or for any
Mm-mm.
phone
Correct.
producer, no.
Yeah.
But it's early days, and with how many years does a president get to sit to? 4 years, no, depending if they get an extension in the U.S.
Yeah.
Towards as we approach the next elections season or election cycle,
Mm.
we suspect that they will be a little less aggressive with the changes, no? Because as
Mm-mm.
pragmatists and politicians who want to win again in the
Mm-mm.
forthcoming elections, they will probably avoid losing support from a good portion of the population if the adjustments are too strong or too heavy for many Americans or many workers everywhere in
Mm-mm.
the world. So
Correct.
we're
Correct.
hoping that it will be less intense as we move along.
Mm-mm.
It was very, very intense in April, as you remember. The pronouncements of the tariffs were so huge, no? And then someone was deported from the US, even with the courts already telling the administration to bring back this person to the US. They defied the ruling. So, and then he was also saying the central bank, who is independent from the government, to resign, no, and abandon his position. So it's like he was trying to erode institutions. No, he's challenging. Uh, but as we move towards the approach of the next elections, we suspect that it will be a lot less intense. No, and out of pragmatism will
Mm-mm.
not be as radical as what we're seeing these days. No?
Yeah. And looking at how our economy is doing naman for the past quarter, it
Mm.
seems like we're really going well naman, di ba, with our GDP, and
Mhm.
our inflation rates are not as, ano, as ganyan.
Yeah, not derailed. No, it's not been
Oo.
as
Yeah.
derailed as other economies. Yeah,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
yeah, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, there are also challenges, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
Remittances could be affected by
Correct.
new taxation.
Yeah.
Immigration is tighter, and
Mm-hmm.
young people. I don't know. You probably have a better feel for it, Danny.
Mm.
If 10, 20 years ago people were so eager to leave the country as OFWs, maybe
Mm-mm.
because of remote work, the young
Yeah.
people now would really prefer to be here and earn their dollars
Mm.
geographically in our shores. No, of course they
Mm-mm.
they also learn about that, but not as probably
Yeah.
as much as an in-person type of, if you're being mentored as a doctor or as
Right.
a physical worker, no. But
Mm-mm.
if young people start refusing, to bring
Mm-mm.
in dollars by doing the traditional OFW or taking the traditional
Yeah.
OFW path, then that could be a problem for our dollar inflows in our country at one
Mm.
point, and can be a destabilizing
Mm-mm.
factor, for the Philippines. But so far, as you said, we're in a good place because we don't export so much, no.
Yeah.
We export people, uh, and we don't depend so much on
Yeah.
manufacturing, no? So we're a
Yeah.
service-based
Mm-mm.
economy. So that, in a way,
Yeah.
helps that we're not going to be as disrupted as Vietnam, as
Mm-mm.
Indonesia, as these very
Yeah.
export-oriented economies are expected to be affected.
Mm-mm. So it's really people who are with the exchange rate. But to your point on the um going abroad and earning
Hmm.
a different currency, I think today the sentiment is still the same. Na well, at least in my circle,
Mhm.
many would still want to try moving to a different country and earn a different currency rate. But with, as you said, na given the fluctuations of the US and the dollar, that could also potentially shift
Hmm.
perhaps in the next 2 to 3 years. Because if that plays out, then the countries who are accepting would lessen the um, foreign
Workers, yeah,
nationalities, right,
yeah,
in their country, because we see it happening in Singapore right now, no, na they're prioritizing more and more Singaporean locals than,
locals.
yeah. Mm-mm. Hmm. We're so in the in between.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I'm hoping that the young people could, they will consider working in the regions
Mm-mm.
instead of all moving to Metro Manila or to Singapore,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
where property is more affordable and you don't have to spend 2, 3 hours, maybe five
Mm-mm.
hours when the Magallanes project, sorry, the Guadalupe project pushes
Yeah.
through, no? So
Yeah.
um, at least they now have an option, no? And they can pursue this um, purchase of a house and the like without having to suffer paying very high mortgages and traveling so long in the city,
Mm-mm.
so
We,
yeah,
we,
that's also an opportunity, by the way,
mm-mm.
for developers. They are finding projects outside Metro Manila to be more,
Yeah.
more stable, and demand seems to be really picking up,
Interesting. Need to catch that wave.
yeah, yeah,
Need to catch that
while
wave,
the
Sergio.
property is still
Yeah.
affordable. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah. It's your last question,
go ahead,
Sergio.
go ahead.
How about an advice that you could give, let's say, a 20-year-old
Hmm.
today
I
na
have 20-year-olds. All my kids
Ooh.
are in their 20s.
Mm. Then what is the advice that you would give
I
them?
tell them that this was what made us successful, or these were the elements that allowed us to achieve what we achieved. No, we had to take further studies and we had to stay in the company longer. No, but it could be different in their world. No, and as you said earlier, the challenges are relatively um, are in absolute levels probably even more these days than they were during our time, when the economy wasn't doing, even if the economy wasn't doing so well. So my advice to them is that's precisely what we're talking about, to be agile enough to choose the path that is appropriate for your generation. If, like, one of my kids is going to take up further studies, no, if he realizes that pursuing it isn't going to get him far, then he should be flexible enough to not either stop or maybe pause, or maybe have the mindset that getting a degree is just one additional advantage these days that compared to our generation was it's probably much less effective than it was before. Signaling that you learned more isn't probably going to be as effective as it was during our time today, because because of all the tools. I think more hiring now happens based on skills rather than the degrees, rather than grades, rather than. So that's what I tell them as their parent. So I would probably say the same to a young colleague, no, or a new entrant in the market, or a new applicant, or a new employee. Yes, this worked during our time, and you can follow this model. You can be an expert using, spending 10,000 hours learning this particular subject, something I did teaching and teaching and doing research when I was young. But um, it might not be the same formula you need to become effective in this new environment. But most importantly, you be a human being. You try to connect with people sincerely. Just don't just be transactional. You try to listen to your boss.
Yeah.
Don't judge them. Don't say
Mm-mm.
that they're boomers and that they didn't work hard. They were lucky to have bought property at a very young age.
Mhm.
Now they don't have to work anymore. So, um, yeah, it's good that you invited an old guy today. Dan.
I think it goes both ways naman, Sir June, in terms of the
Yeah.
judgment side of things, right?
Mm,
And
yes.
that's what I'm
Yes.
really trying to bridge also in this podcast, is to really have that multi-generational
Mm,
perspective on the
mm,
same things that we are experiencing today. So thank you so much, Sir June, for joining us tonight. And to the audience who are listening tonight, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, comment down below. What do you think? Do you have any takeaways?
mm.
And we'll see you on the next one.
See you.
Bye.